The story of D-Day has been told 1,000 times. The storming of the beaches, the clash of empires, the courage of ordinary men. But behind the thunder of artillery and the crash of landing craft was a quieter, deadlier war. A war of whispers, codes, and deception. In this shadow war, one spy would emerge as the unlikely savior of D-Day. His name was Juan Pujol García, though to the Allies he was Garbo, and to the Germans, Abwehr. A man who, through lies so carefully woven they became truth, deceived Hitler himself. Our story begins not in London or Berlin, but in the neutral streets of Lisbon in 1941, a crossroads of spies. Everyone was watching everyone. British agents tracked German couriers, the Gestapo hunted defectors, diplomats smiled over coffee while their briefcases brimmed with secrets. And amid this dangerous tangle moved a man with neither training nor allegiance, only a burning hatred for tyranny and a curious talent for deceit. Juan Pujol was not a soldier. He had no background in intelligence. He had been a failed businessman, a hotel manager, even a chicken farmer. But what he did possess was a unique conviction that he could fight fascism not with bullets, but with lies. He loathed both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, seeing in them two faces of the same monster, totalitarianism. And in the chaos of war, he saw his chance to act. He approached the British first, offering his services as a spy. But in 1941, the British Secret Intelligence Service, SIS, dismissed him as delusional. They had no interest in an untrained Spaniard claiming he could infiltrate the Nazis. So Pujol did something few would dare. He went directly to the enemy. In Madrid, he presented himself to the German Abwehr, claiming he was a fervent supporter of Hitler and eager to serve the Reich. The Germans, desperate for agents in Britain, saw potential. They trained him briefly in espionage techniques and gave him invisible ink, codes, and a mission: travel to London, build a spy network, and report on British military operations. But Pujol never set foot in Britain. Instead, he moved to Lisbon and began to construct an illusion so vast that even Berlin would believe it. He created a fictional spy ring, imaginary agents supposedly scattered across Britain, an RAF officer in Glasgow, a Welsh nationalist, a sailor in Liverpool, even a clerk in the Ministry of Information. Using nothing but newspapers, tourist maps, and a vivid imagination, he began sending detailed reports to his German handlers, all entirely fabricated. He wrote about convoy movements based on shipping news, troop morale based on radio broadcasts, and political gossip from columns in the press. His letters, transmitted via neutral Spain, soon gained credibility. The Germans were impressed by his network, so much so that they began paying stipends for his agents. Pujol, now codenamed Arabelle by the Abwehr, was on their payroll. Meanwhile, British intelligence began to take notice. The Germans seemed unusually well informed about non-critical information, small truths that hid larger lies. When IM5 analyzed the intercepted reports, they realized someone was feeding the Germans misleading yet believable data. In 1942, they finally traced the source, and to their astonishment, it was the same eccentric Spaniard they had once rejected. This time, they accepted him. Pujol was secretly brought to London, where he met his new handlers in IM5's double-cross committee, the group responsible for turning captured or volunteer spies into double agents. He was given the code name Garbo, after the actress Greta Garbo, because of his dramatic flair and his ability to play multiple roles convincingly. With the British now orchestrating his deception, the Garbo network expanded. IM5 officers helped him craft elaborate, plausible messages, complete with mistakes, delays, and agent chatter. The Germans never suspected that every word was approved in London before being sent. By 1943, Garbo had become one of the most trusted agents in the Abwehr. He had convinced his handlers that he commanded a vast organization of 27 agents across Britain, none of whom actually existed. The Germans rewarded him with money, medals, and deep trust, and that trust would become the Allies' most powerful weapon. When plans began for Operation Overland, the invasion of Nazi-occupied France, deception became as vital as tanks or aircraft. Hitler believed the invasion could come anywhere, Norway, Brittany, or the Pas de Calais. The Allies, through Operation Bodyguard and its sub-operations like Fortitude, sought to exploit that uncertainty. Garbo's role would be to confirm Hitler's false assumptions. Using his credibility with the Germans, he would feed them a stream of carefully designed misinformation, reports that would make the real invasion in Normandy look like a diversion. Months of meticulous preparation followed. Garbo sent hundreds of messages to his German contacts. He described phantom divisions, the fictitious 1st U.S. Army Group, supposedly commanded by General George Patton, stationed in southeast England. He reported on troop buildups that did not exist, supply lines that led nowhere, and fake radio traffic that British signal units transmitted to support the illusion. By early 1944, German High Command was convinced. They believed Patton's army was the main invasion force, ready to strike at Calais. Garbo's deception had taken root in Hitler's strategic mind. As D-Day approached, the tension inside IM-5 grew unbearable. If Garbo's deception worked, thousands of lives would be saved. If it failed, the beaches of Normandy would become slaughter fields. Then came the morning of June 6, 1944. Allied forces stormed the beaches. At 4:30 a.m., Garbo's operators sent a message to his German handlers, too late to warn of the landings, but just in time to reinforce the illusion that Normandy was only the beginning. The message claimed Garbo's agents had reported a diversionary assault in Normandy, a feint, and that the real invasion would come later, across the Pas de Calais. The Germans believed it. For weeks after D-Day, Hitler held back vital divisions in the north, waiting for an attack that never came. That hesitation gave the Allies the foothold they needed to liberate France. Garbo's lies had saved the invasion and possibly the war. But his story was far from over. For though the Allies hailed him as a hero, he remained in mortal danger. The Germans still believed in him and continued to trust him even after D-Day. How could one man maintain two identities, serving both sides while deceiving the most paranoid regime in history? How did he live with the lies that killed and saved thousands? The answers would come in the shadows as Garbo's double life reached its breaking point. After the liberation of Western Europe, Garbo disappeared from public view. His work remained classified for decades, known only to MI5 and a few senior Allied commanders. The Germans, meanwhile, continued to believe in his network long after the war ended. In 1945, Garbo quietly retired from espionage, returning to a life of anonymity. He published memoirs years later, revealing his exploits and providing historians with unprecedented insight into the double-cross system. The scale of his deception, a single man commanding an imaginary army of spies, reshaped our understanding of intelligence and warfare. Garbo's legacy extended far beyond D-Day. He demonstrated that war could be won not just with weapons, but with cunning, creativity, and the careful manipulation of information. The Allied victory in Normandy, the liberation of Europe, and ultimately the defeat of Hitler owed a silent debt to this extraordinary spy. His story reminds us that history is shaped not only by armies and generals, but by individuals willing to operate in the shadows. In the frozen halls of deception, Garbo proved that one mind, guided by intelligence and courage, could alter the course of nations. The spy who saved D-Day remains an enduring testament to human ingenuity, the subtle power of information, and the extraordinary lengths to which individuals will go to combat tyranny. His legacy is now immortal, a secret hero of a world-changing conflict
whose deception became a weapon as decisive as any battleship, tank, or landing craft.
After the success of D-Day, Garbo's work entered a new phase: consolidation and maintenance of deception. The Germans remained suspicious of Normandy's apparent success, believing it to be merely a feint orchestrated by the Allies. Garbo's task was to ensure they did not reallocate their forces prematurely. Every message had to balance plausibility with urgency. Garbo's reports described troop movements, fictitious counterattacks, and even weather delays that never occurred. He painted an intricate portrait of Allied activity, convincing the Germans that the Normandy invasion was just one part of a larger plan. Each detail reinforced previous lies, creating a tapestry of deception so seamless that German intelligence could not distinguish fact from fabrication. During this period, Garbo cultivated personal narratives within his fictitious spy network. He described agents' families, illnesses, heroic acts, and even minor disputes. Mundane details that lent authenticity. Every element was calculated. The more human and believable the network, the more the Germans trusted it. The Abwehr, blinded by Garbo's fabrications, misallocated critical forces. Entire divisions remained in northern France, awaiting attacks that never came. German commanders expressed frustration, but deferred to intelligence reports from trusted sources. Hitler, convinced of Garbo's credibility, held back elite troops, allowing the Allies to strengthen their positions in Normandy. Beyond military outcomes, Garbo's work highlighted the psychology of warfare. Deception was not merely about misinformation, it was about shaping perception, exploiting biases, and anticipating enemy decision-making. Garbo understood this intuitively, crafting reports that aligned with German expectations and fears. Amid this, Garbo remained invisible to the public. Newspapers hailed generals and soldiers, but the spy who saved D-Day operated in silence. His accomplishments were measured in lives preserved, opportunities gained, and the strategic paralysis of the enemy. Unlike battlefield heroes, Garbo's deeds would remain classified for decades. As summer 1944 progressed, the Allies pushed inland. Garbo continued his transmissions, describing attacks in Calais and other regions, further cementing the Germans' misperception. His meticulous attention to detail and deep understanding of enemy psychology ensured that Operation Bodyguard's objectives were fully realized. Eventually, the war moved beyond Normandy. Garbo's role shifted from deception to extraction. British intelligence arranged for his post-war identity and protection. Yet even after the conflict, he maintained humility, rejecting fame and recognition. He had lived in shadows, influencing history without ever stepping into the light. As 1944 drew closer, the war had reached a pivotal juncture. The Germans were entrenched across Western Europe. The Atlantic Wall had become a formidable fortress, and the Allies were planning the greatest amphibious invasion in history, Operation Overlord. Yet, as armies amassed and generals argued over strategies, few outside the highest levels of MI5 and SHAEF appreciated the critical role of deception. Garbo, now fully integrated into the British intelligence network, became a linchpin in the web of lies that would save countless lives on D-Day. The Germans had grown so reliant on his intelligence that any report from Arabelle carried immense weight. Every letter, every fabricated agent report was carefully designed to mislead Hitler's high command, creating an entire phantom front in southeastern England, the fictitious 1st U.S. Army Group, FUSAG, under the command of General George S. Patton. Every detail mattered. Garbo described troop movements, convoy schedules, training exercises, and even minor quarrels among officers, all invented, yet delivered with uncanny plausibility. He noted imagined sightings of landing craft along the southern English coast,
phantom supply depots, and radio chatter intercepted by German units. The Abwehr accepted these reports as gospel. In Berlin, the Nazi leadership was convinced. Hitler, notoriously paranoid and obsessed with secret intelligence, relied heavily on Garbo's information. The German High Command redeployed divisions, stockpiled reserves, and diverted resources to Calais, all because of the Spanish spy who had never set foot on English soil. Garbo's influence extended beyond simple misinformation. He manipulated timing and context to maximize confusion. For example, when British deception planners moved dummy tanks across southern England under Operation Fortitude South, Garbo sent detailed observations to Germany, praising the movement of the 1st U.S. Army Group and warning of impending assaults. He described the unit's strengths, composition, and even fictitious names of division commanders. German generals took these reports seriously, believing they had actionable intelligence on Allied preparations. The more the Germans trusted him, the more Garbo could steer their strategic decisions. His letters became increasingly elaborate, incorporating small errors and delays to simulate authentic field reporting. He even invented agents within the Abwehr itself, claiming that rival factions in German intelligence were leaking misinformation. This added a layer of complexity that made his network appear fully organic and self-sustaining. Meanwhile, Garbo's personal life became a careful act of balance. In Lisbon, he maintained the persona of a German sympathizer while secretly liaising with MI5. He cultivated an image of a devoted informant, fully committed to the Reich, while preparing for a post-D-Day extraction. His letters were meticulous, each sentence chosen to maintain credibility, each fact or truth designed to make the Germans lower their guard. By early June 1944, Garbo's deception network was at its peak. German intelligence had fully committed to believing that the main invasion would target Calais, supported by the fictitious divisions he had invented. Meanwhile, the Allies were preparing for the real assault on Normandy. On June 5th, D-Day Eve, Garbo transmitted a critical message, a warning that the invasion in Normandy was a diversion and that the main assault would hit Calais in the coming weeks. Hitler, misled by decades of paranoia and a steady stream of Garbo's reports, reinforced his troops along the Pas de Calais. This decision would prove crucial. As the first landing craft approached Normandy beaches at dawn on June 6th, the Germans were caught off guard. Many of their best divisions remained in reserve, waiting for the phantom attack that Garbo had reported. The Allies, facing fierce resistance, gained the advantage of superior numbers, surprise, and overwhelming firepower, advantages magnified by a single spy's careful manipulation of enemy perception. Even as the Normandy campaign progressed, Garbo continued to feed false intelligence. He reported minor setbacks and exaggerated obstacles to maintain the Germans' belief in his credibility. For weeks, he sustained the illusion of a large-scale diversion, reinforcing the false narrative that Normandy was a secondary attack. Behind the scenes, British intelligence monitored every word, ensuring that Garbo's communications remained consistent and convincing. The double-agent system demanded precision, for a single misstep could expose him and compromise the entire operation. Yet Garbo, with extraordinary discipline and creativity, never faltered. He managed multiple identities, a network of imaginary agents, and a flood of fabricated reports, all while remaining unseen and largely unrecognized by the world he was helping to save. By late June 1944, the Allies had secured a firm foothold in Normandy. German command was paralyzed, unsure where the next strike would occur. The success of D-Day, and ultimately the liberation of Western Europe, owed much to this delicate choreography of lies. Garbo's impact on history was profound. A single man operating in the shadows had manipulated one of the most powerful militaries in the world, saving tens of thousands of lives in the process. Yet the danger remained. If the Germans discovered the truth, Garbo would face certain death. The tension of living a double life, of deceiving an enemy so cunning and ruthless, left a psychological mark. Garbo carried the burden of responsibility with a mixture of pride and fear. He was a hero whose battlefield was words and ideas, not guns and tanks.